He thought the badge on his chest gave him the right to be judge, jury, and executioner. Officer Vance Harlan was the kind of cop who believed he owned every inch of asphalt in Pine Creek, Alabama, and he had a special kind of contempt for outsiders who drove cars nicer than his. But on one humid summer day, Harlan made the biggest mistake of his life. He didn't just profile a black couple in a luxury SUV. He unknowingly declared war on two of the highest-ranking federal agents in the country. This isn't just a story about bad policing. It's a story about the most satisfying career-ending karma you will ever hear. Buckle up. The heat in Pine Creek didn't just sit on you. It pressed down like a wet wool blanket. It was the kind of small town where everybody knew everybody's business, mostly because there wasn't much business to know. And at the center of that web sat Officer Vance Harlan. He was 45, heavy in the gut, with a buzz cut that had retreated halfway up his scalp. He wore his uniform tight, the fabric straining against a chest that hadn't seen a gym in years. But he compensated with attitude. In Pine Creek, Vance wasn't just a patrolman, he was the gatekeeper. He had been on the force for 2 decades, long enough to know which drunk drivers to drive home and which ones to throw in the tank. He had a reputation he cultivated carefully. They called him the Hammer down at the local dive bar, the Rusty Nail. He liked that. Hammers crush things. Vance was parked in his usual speed trap, a gravel turnout hidden behind a massive billboard advertising Langston's personal injury law. He was sipping lukewarm sweet tea, sweat beading on his upper lip, watching the interstate traffic trickle onto Main Street. He was bored. Boredom was dangerous for a man like Vance Harlan. Boredom meant he started looking for trouble. That's when he saw it, an obsidian black Range Rover, the newest model, gleaming so hard the sun bounced off it like a mirror. It was moving slowly, respectfully, doing exactly the speed limit. But to Vance, that was the first red flag. In his mind, nobody drove the speed limit unless they were hiding something. He squinted, leaning forward over the steering wheel. The windows were tinted dark, barely legal by Alabama standards, but he could make out the silhouettes. 2 people. As the car passed his hideout, a shaft of sunlight cut through the windshield. Vance saw the driver, a black man, broad shoulders, sunglasses, one hand casually on the wheel. Next to him, a black woman looking down at a phone or a map. The knot in Vance's stomach tightened. It was that familiar mix of jealousy and territorial aggression. Drug money, he thought instantly. It was a reflex, a neural pathway worn deep by years of unchecked bias. Who else drives a 6-figure car through Pine Creek? Nobody working a 9-to-5 buys that. He didn't check the plates. He didn't wait for a traffic infraction. He just threw the gear shift into drive. The gravel crunched loudly as his cruiser lurched onto the pavement. "Dispatch, this is Unit 4 Alpha," Vance mumbled into his radio, not bothering to swallow his mouthful of ice. "I'm pursuing a suspicious vehicle. Black Range Rover heading north on Main. Possible drug trafficking suspicion." The dispatcher, old Mrs. Higgins, crackled back. She didn't ask for probable cause. In Pine Creek, Vance's gut was probable cause. Vance flipped the lights, no siren, just the silent strobe thread of authority. He sped up, riding the bumper of the Range Rover, aggressively trying to spook them. Run, he thought. Give me a reason. The Range Rover didn't run. It didn't swerve. The driver signaled right calmly, methodically, and pulled over onto the dusty shoulder near the old Baptist church. Vance smirked. Gotcha. He checked his dash cam. It was on, but Vance knew the tricks. He angled his cruiser slightly so the camera would catch the suspect's door. But the audio could be temperamental if he needed it to be. He unbuckled his seatbelt and adjusted his belt. He rested his hand on the grip of his Glock, not drawing it, just letting it know he was there. He walked up to the passenger side window. He preferred the passenger side. It threw people off, made them turn their backs to him. He rapped his knuckles hard on the glass. Bang, bang, bang! The window slid down silently. Inside, the air conditioning blasted. The interior smelled like new leather and nothing else. The woman in the passenger seat turned to look at him. She was striking, sharp features, hair pulled back in a tight professional bun, wearing a navy blazer. She looked at him over the rim of her sunglasses. Her eyes weren't fearful. They were annoyed. "Is there a problem, officer?" she asked. Her voice was crisp, articulate, no accent. Vance hated that tone. It sounded like education. It sounded like she thought she was better than him. "License and registration," Vance barked, ignoring her question. He leaned in, letting his sweaty face invade their cool sanctuary. He looked past her to the driver. The driver was a mountain of a man. He wore a fitted gray t-shirt that showed off arms the size of tree trunks. He too was calm, unnervingly calm. "I asked you a question, ma'am," Vance said, his voice dropping an octave. "Do you know why I pulled you over?" "We were doing the speed limit," the driver said. His voice was deep, a bass rumble. "Signal was on, plates are valid." "I pulled you over because you have an obstructed view," Vance lied. It was his go-to. That air freshener hanging from the mirror. There was no air freshener. The driver glanced at the rearview mirror, then back at Vance. "There's nothing on the mirror, officer." "Don't get smart with me, boy," Vance snapped. The slur slipped out easily, a casual flex of power. "I said license and registration. Now." The woman sighed, a sound of pure exhaustion. "Kendrick, just give it to him. Let's get this over with." The driver, Kendrick, reached slowly toward the center console. "Hands!" Vance screamed, jumping back and putting his hand on his gun. "I want to see hands on the dash now." "I'm getting my wallet," Kendrick said, freezing his movement. "You asked for ID." "I don't know what you're reaching for," Vance yelled, playing to the invisible audience of his dash cam, setting the stage for self-defense. "Get out of the car, both of you, out." "Officer," the woman said, her voice turning icy. "This is unnecessary. We are complying." "Get out or I will drag you out," Vance roared. He was escalating it. He wanted a reaction. He wanted them to yell back, to resist. That gave him permission to do what he really wanted to do. Put them on the ground. Kendrick looked at the woman. They exchanged a glance Vance couldn't decipher. It wasn't fear. It was a silent communication. Protocol. "Okay," Kendrick said. "We're stepping out." Vance stepped back, hand twitching over his holster. He was grinning internally. He was going to tear this fancy car apart. Find the drugs he knew were hidden in the panels and seize the vehicle. By tonight, he'd be the hero of the precinct. He had no idea that he had just ordered the assistant special agent in charge of the Atlanta field office and a senior DOJ Civil Rights prosecutor out of their vehicle. The heat hit Kendrick and Nia Whitaker the moment they stepped onto the roadside gravel. It was suffocating, but neither flinched. They stood by the side of the car, hands clearly visible. "Spread them," Vance ordered. "Hands on the hood." "Am I under arrest?" Kendrick asked, not moving yet. "You're being detained for investigation," Vance spat. "Now do what I told you." Kendrick placed his large hands on the hot metal of the hood. Nia did the same. Vance moved in behind Kendrick. He kicked Kendrick's ankles apart roughly. "Wider," Vance growled. He patted Kendrick down, his hands aggressive and intrusive. He checked the waistband, the pockets, the inner thighs. He was looking for a weapon or a baggie, anything hard. He felt a hard rectangular lump in Kendrick's back pocket. "What's this?" Vance asked, triumph rising in his throat. "That is my wallet," Kendrick said, "which contains the ID you asked for." Vance ripped the wallet out. He didn't open it yet. He tossed it onto the hood of the car. He moved to Nia. "Officer," Nia said sharply, "I do not consent to a search. You have no probable cause." "I have probable cause because you're acting nervous and your partner here is combative," Vance improvised. He reached for her. "Do not touch me," Nia said. It wasn't a scream, it was a command. It stopped Vance dead for a split second. "You listen to me," Vance whispered, leaning into her ear, smelling her expensive perfume. "You're in Pine Creek now. The Constitution ends at the county line. I can do whatever I want." He grabbed her arm and spun her around. He patted her down quickly, roughly. He felt nothing on her. Frustrated, he stepped back. "Stay right there. If you move, I will tase you. You hear me?" He walked to the driver's side door of the Range Rover. "You cannot enter the vehicle without a warrant," Nia called out. "Probable cause," Vance shouted back. "I smelled marijuana." "You are lying," Kendrick said. "Neither of us smokes. This is illegal." "Tell it to the judge," Vance muttered. He dove into the car. He tore through the center console, mints, a charging cable, a pair of Ray-Bans. Nothing. He opened the glove box, insurance papers, rental agreement, Hertz, rented in Atlanta. Drug runners always use rentals, he confirmed to himself. He reached under the driver's seat. His hand brushed against something cold and metal. Jackpot. Vance's heart hammered against his ribs. He pulled it out. It was a Sig Sauer P32. Oh, black matte finish, standard capacity magazine. He scrambled out of the car, holding the gun up in the air like a trophy. "Gun!" he screamed. "Gun on the ground! Get on the ground now!" He leveled his own service weapon at Kendrick's chest. Kendrick didn't drop. He stood up slowly from the hood, turning to face Vance. His face was etched with a dark, dangerous resolve. "Officer," Kendrick said, his voice deadly calm, "put that weapon down. That firearm is legal. Get on the ground, or I will drop you." Vance was shaking now. Adrenaline flooded his system. "You're under arrest for illegal possession of a concealed weapon." "It's not illegal," Naya said, her hands still in the air, but her eyes tracking Vance's trigger finger. "Check the wallet, officer. Open the wallet you threw on the hood." "I don't care about your fake IDs," Vance yelled. He keyed his radio on his shoulder. "Dispatch 1018. I need backup. I have 2 suspects at gunpoint. Weapon recovered. Send everyone." "You are making a mistake that will cost you everything," Kendrick said. "Look at the badge next to the gun." Vance paused. He looked at the gun in his left hand. There was a small leather holder clipped to the belt he had missed under the seat. He hadn't pulled the holster out. Just the gun. "Shut up!" Vance yelled. Sirens wailed in the distance. The cavalry was coming. Vance felt a surge of power. He was going to parade these two through the station. He'd be on the nightly news. 2 more cruisers screeched to a halt behind him. Dust billowed everywhere. Out popped Officer Bryce Caldwell and Rookie Deputy Sanders. "Cuff 'em!" Vance shouted. "Resisting arrest. Illegal firearm." Bryce, a younger version of Vance, but with less confidence, rushed Kendrick. He grabbed Kendrick's arm and twisted it behind his back. Kendrick didn't resist physically, but his muscles were so dense, Bryce struggled to bring the wrists together. "I'm a federal agent," Kendrick said loudly, clearly, so the dash cams of the new cars would pick it up. "My badge is in the wallet on the hood. If you put those cuffs on me, you are kidnapping a federal officer." Bryce hesitated. He looked at Vance. "Vance, what's he saying?" "He's lying," Vance screamed. "They all say that. Cuff him." Bryce snapped the cuffs on. Click, click. Sanders grabbed Naya. She allowed herself to be cuffed, her eyes never leaving Vance's face. She was memorizing him. Every mole, every sweat stain, every badge number. "You better check that wallet, Vance," Bryce said nervously. "Just to be sure." "Fine," Vance muttered. He holstered his weapon and snatched the wallet off the hood. He flipped it open. He expected to see a driver's license, maybe a fake Social Security card. Instead, a gold shield glinted in the sunlight. It was heavy, detailed. The eagle spread its wings across the top. Below it, bold blue letters set into the gold. Department of Justice, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Special Agent. Vance blinked. He rubbed his thumb over the badge. He looked at the ID card in the adjacent window. Kendrick Whitaker, Special Agent in Charge. Clearance level, Top Secret / SCI. Vance's stomach dropped through the floor. The world tilted slightly on its axis. The heat seemed to vanish, replaced by a cold chill that started at the base of his spine. He looked at the second wallet. Naya's purse was in the car. He ran to the car, grabbed her purse, and dumped it on the seat. Another badge tumbled out. United States Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division. Senior Prosecutor. Vance looked up. Kendrick was standing by the trunk of the cruiser, cuffed. He wasn't looking at the ground. He was looking right at Vance. And for the first time, Vance realized the look on Kendrick's face wasn't anger. It was pity. Bryce looked at Vance. "Vance, they're real?" Vance's throat was dry as sand. He looked at the gold badge in his hand. His fingers were shaking so hard he almost dropped it. He had just arrested the FBI, but he didn't know the half of it yet. He didn't know why they were in Pine Creek. The ride to the Pine Creek Police Department was short, but it felt like an eternity inside the cramped back seat of the cruiser. The plexiglass divider was scratched and yellowed, a barrier between the dirty reality of the back seat and the air-conditioned authority of the front. Kendrick sat hunched over. He was simply too big for the space. His knees pressed against the cage, but he didn't complain. He breathed rhythmically, a technique he'd learned during hostage negotiations training at Quantico. Beside him, Nia stared out the window, watching the familiar landmarks of the small town pass by. The dilapidated gas station, the high school football field, the endless row of churches. Officer Bryce Caldwell, driving the car, kept glancing in the rearview mirror. He looked terrified. The confidence of the badge was evaporating with every mile. "Vance says they're fakes," Bryce muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "Gotta be fakes. Who carries a badge like that in a glove box?" "Someone who doesn't want to flash it unless necessary," Kendrick said from the back. His voice was deep, resonating through the divider. "Officer Caldwell, I want you to think very carefully about your next few actions. You are currently an accessory to a federal kidnapping. If you process us, if you print us, you are cementing your role in this lawsuit." "Shut up," Bryce shouted, but his voice cracked. "You don't talk back there." They pulled into the station's sally port. The heavy metal gate rattled shut behind them, sealing out the sunlight. Vance Harlan was already there. He had sped ahead, desperate to control the narrative before Kendrick and Nia arrived. He was standing by the booking desk, talking fast to the desk sergeant, a weary man named Sergeant Ridley. "Drug runners," Vance was saying, loud enough for the whole room to hear. "High-level stuff, Ridley. Fancy car, concealed weapon, fake federal IDs. Real professional counterfeits. I need them processed separate. Maximum security protocols. No calls until we verify their identities." Ridley looked up over his reading glasses, chewing on a toothpick. "Feds, Vance. You arrested feds." "Fake feds!" Vance slammed his hand on the counter. "Don't you get it? It's a cover. They think the badge scares us off. Not me. I saw right through it." The door to the sally port opened, and Bryce marched Kendrick and Nia in. Kendrick walked with his head high despite the cuffs. Nia looked like she was walking into a boardroom, not a jail. "Empty your pockets," Vance ordered, walking over to them. He grabbed Kendrick's arm to shove him toward the counter, but it was like shoving a brick wall. Kendrick didn't budge until he chose to. "You have our wallets," Nia said coolly. "You have our phones. You have our badges, which, by the way, Officer Harlan, you are legally required to verify immediately by calling the DOJ switchboard. Do you want the number, or do you know how to use Google?" "I don't need your numbers," Vance sneered. He leaned in close to her face. "I'm going to book you as Jane Doe until you give me your real name. You're going to sit in a holding cell with the meth heads and the hookers until you break." "My name is Nia Whitaker," she repeated, enunciating every syllable. "I am a senior prosecutor for the Civil Rights Division, and you are currently violating Title 18, Section 242 of the United States Code, deprivation of rights under color of law." Vance laughed. It was a harsh barking sound. "You memorized the code. Cute. Strip search them." The room went silent. Even Bryce froze. "Excuse me?" Sergeant Ridley asked. "You heard me," Vance said, his eyes manic. "I suspect they are carrying narcotics internally. Standard procedure for drug trafficking suspects. Strip search, both of them." "I'm not doing that, Vance," the female officer on duty, Officer Reed, said from the corner. She stood up, crossing her arms. "I'm not strip searching a woman in a blazer who sounds like a lawyer because you have a hunch. This is insubordination." "No, you're insubordinate," Vance screamed, his face turning beet red. "I am the arresting officer. I give the orders." "Actually," a new voice boomed from the hallway, "I give the orders." Chief Warren Hayes walked into the booking area. Hayes was a relic of the Old South, a man with skin like leather and a belly that hung over his belt buckle. He wasn't a good man, but he was pragmatic. He didn't like noise, and Vance was making a lot of noise. "What is this circus, Harlan?" Hayes asked, eyeing the well-dressed couple in cuffs. "Chief, I caught big fish," Vance said, rushing over. "Drug runners, Range Rover, concealed weapon. And look at this." He tossed the badges onto the counter. "Fake federal ODs, real professional counterfeits." Hayes picked up Kendrick's badge. He felt the weight of it. He ran his thumb over the engraving. He frowned. He'd seen fake badges before. They were usually light, cheap metal with glued-on centerpieces. This badge was solid brass. The enamel was perfect, and it had a chip embedded in the back for secure building access. Hayes looked up at Kendrick. He looked at the handcuffs. "Who are you?" Hayes asked quietly. "Special Agent in Charge Kendrick Whitaker," Kendrick said. "FBI, Atlanta Field Office. And if you don't take these cuffs off me in the next 10 seconds, Chief Hayes, I will personally ensure that this building is turned into a parking lot." Hayes looked at Vance. "Did you run the badge number?" "It's fake," Vance insisted. "Why would I run a fake number?" "Now run it," Hayes ordered Ridley. "I can't," Ridley said, typing on his keyboard. "System slow, but Chief..." Hayes looked at the woman's ID. "Whitaker, same last name." Hayes's eyes narrowed. "You arrested a husband and wife?" "Siblings," Naya corrected, "and partners on the task force." "Task force?" Vance scoffed. "What task force? There's no task force in Pine Creek." Kendrick smiled. It was a terrifying smile. "That's because you're the target, Harlan." The air left the room. "What did you say?" Vance whispered. "We aren't passing through," Kendrick said, his voice dropping to a low rumble that vibrated through the room. "We've been tracking a money laundering scheme involving Langston's personal injury law and kickbacks to local law enforcement for months. We were on our way to meet with our local informant when you pulled us over." Vance's face went white. The billboard. He sat under that billboard every day. He took cash envelopes from Langston every week to ignore certain DUIs. "He's lying!" Vance shrieked. "He's trying to scare you." "Uncuff them," Hayes said softly. "No!" Vance yelled. He drew his taser. "Nobody touches them. They are my collars." "Vance, put the taser down," Bryce shouted, drawing his own gun. The station was in a standoff. Police versus police. "This is it," Kendrick said calmly. "The moment you decide how your life ends, Officer Harlan. You tase me, I sue you. You shoot me, my team outside turns this place into Swiss cheese. Or you put the weapon down and we talk about a plea deal." Vance's hand shook. He looked at the chief. The chief had turned his back on him. Vance lowered the taser. "Uncuff them," Hayes repeated. Bryce rushed forward and unlocked the cuffs. Kendrick rubbed his wrists. He didn't attack Vance. He didn't yell. He simply reached over the counter, took his phone from the plastic bin, and turned it on. "I need to make a call," Kendrick said. "Go ahead," Hayes said, wiping his forehead with a handkerchief. "Office line is open." "I don't need your line," Kendrick said. He dialed a number on his cell. He put it on speaker. The room was silent. Ring, director's office," a woman's voice answered. "Patricia, it's Kendrick Whitaker, Code Red, Pine Creek, Alabama." "Code Red!" The voice on the other end sharpened instantly. "Status of Agent Whitaker and Prosecutor Whitaker?" "Secure, but we have been compromised. Local law enforcement intercepted us. I was held at gunpoint. Illegal search and seizure, false imprisonment." "Are you safe now?" "For the moment, but I need the team. Bring everyone." "ETA 12 minutes. They were holding at the perimeter. Sit tight, Kendrick." The line clicked dead. Kendrick looked at Vance Harlan. Vance was leaning against the filing cabinet, looking like he was about to vomit. 12 minutes, Kendrick said. "I'd suggest you start writing your resignation letter, though you won't be needing it where you're going. 12 minutes is a long time in a quiet police station. It's enough time to think about every mistake you've ever made." Vance Harlan sat in a chair in the corner of the booking room. No one was speaking to him. His fellow officers, Bryce, Reed, even old Sergeant Ridley, had subconsciously moved to the other side of the room, distancing themselves from the blast radius. Kendrick and Naya sat on a metal bench, composed. Naya had taken a notebook out of her purse and was writing furiously. Every few seconds, she would look up, look at Vance, and make a note. "What are you writing?" Vance asked, his voice a rasp. "Your indictment," Naya said without looking up. "I'm adding counts for the threat of the strip search. Sexual harassment under color of law adds a nice 5 years to the sentence." "You can't prove that," Vance mumbled. "It's my word against yours." "Actually," Officer Reed spoke up, "I'll testify to it." Vance's head snapped up. "Reed, you'd rat on a brother?" "You're not a brother, Vance," Reed said, her voice shaking but firm. "You're a bully, and you almost got us all killed today. I'm not going to prison for you." "Traitors!" Vance spat. "All of you." Suddenly, the coffee in the mug on Sergeant Ridley's desk rippled. A low, thrumming sound began to vibrate through the floorboards. It started soft, like distant thunder, and grew louder. Thwop. "Is that—" Bryce moved to the window. "Helicopter," Hayes said, staring at the floor. "State police." Then came the sirens. Not the wail of a single cruiser, but a cacophony. It sounded like an invasion. Tires screeched outside. Doors slammed. Lots of doors. "Open the gate!" A voice amplified by a loudspeaker boomed from outside the sally port. "This is the FBI. Open the gate immediately or we will breach." Sergeant Ridley fumbled for the button. He hit it. The heavy metal door rolled up. The sunlight that flooded in was blinding, but the silhouettes standing in it were terrifying. 6 men in full tactical gear carrying AR-15s moved in a phalanx. On their chests, bold yellow letters, FBI. Behind them walked a woman in a sharp gray suit, flanked by 2 state troopers. This was Assistant Director Margaret Hale. She looked like she ate nails for breakfast. "Secure the room!" the lead tactical officer shouted. The team swept in. "Hands! Let me see hands!" Every officer in the Pine Creek station, Hayes, Bryce, Reed, Ridley, put their hands up. Even Vance. The tactical team moved with fluid precision. They bypassed the locals and went straight to Kendrick and Naya. "Sir, ma'am, are you injured?" the lead agent asked, lowering his weapon but keeping his eyes scanning the room. "We're fine, Agent Rostova," Kendrick said, standing up and brushing the dust off his trousers. "Situation is contained." Assistant Director Hale walked into the room. She surveyed the scene with a look of absolute disgust. She locked eyes with Chief Hayes. "Who is in charge here?" she demanded. I am," Hayes stammered. "Chief Warren Hayes." "Chief Hayes," Hale said, stepping into his personal space. "You are relieved of command, effective immediately. The Alabama State Bureau of Investigation is taking over this precinct. This is now a federal crime scene." "On what grounds?" Hayes tried to muster some authority. "On the grounds that your department is running a protection racket for Langston's personal injury law and kickbacks to local law enforcement," Kendrick interrupted. "We have the wiretaps, Chief. We have the bank records. We know about the kickbacks. We know about the planted evidence." Kendrick turned his gaze to Vance. "And we know about Officer Harlan's enforcement techniques." Hale turned to look at Vance. "Is this the one?" "That's him," Naya said, standing up. She pointed a manicured finger at Vance. "Officer Vance Harlan. He initiated the stop without probable cause, assaulted a federal officer, filed a false report, attempted to conduct an illegal strip search, and brandished a taser against detained suspects." Hale nodded. She gestured to the tactical team. "Cuff him." 2 agents grabbed Vance. They didn't do it gently. They kicked his legs apart and slammed him against the wall, mirroring exactly what he had done to Kendrick earlier. "Hey, watch the shoulder," Vance yelped. "You have the right to remain silent," Agent Rostova recited, tightening the zip ties until they bit into Vance's wrists. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a federal court of law." "This is a mistake," Vance shouted as they hauled him toward the door. "I was just doing my job. They looked suspicious. It was a good stop." Kendrick walked over to Vance as he was being dragged out. He leaned in close. "You wanted to find drugs in my car, Vance?" Kendrick asked softly. "You wanted to be a hero? Well, you're going to be famous. You're going to be the face of police corruption in the state of Alabama." "Screw you!" Vance spit at him. Kendrick wiped the speck of saliva from his cheek. He didn't flinch. "Get him out of here," Kendrick said. As Vance was shoved into the back of a black federal SUV, a cage much smaller and darker than his own cruiser, he saw them. The media. News vans were pulling up. CNN, Fox News, local affiliates. The FBI didn't just bring guns, they brought the spotlight. The story of a corrupt small-town cop arresting the FBI was too good to pass up. Back inside, the station was being dismantled. Agents were seizing computers. Files were being boxed up. Chief Hayes was sitting in a chair, head in his hands as a state trooper read him his rights. Naya walked over to the booking desk and picked up her badge. She clipped it onto her belt. She looked at Kendrick. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm fine," Kendrick said. He picked up his own badge. "But we're not done. Harlan is just the muscle. We need Langston, and we need the judge who signs off on these bogus warrants." "Langston is at his office," Naya said, checking her phone. "The B team is raiding it right now." "Good," Kendrick said. He looked at Officer Reed and the rookie Sanders, who were standing in the corner, terrified. Kendrick walked over to them. They flinched. "Relax," Kendrick said. "I know who the bad apples are. You two just stood by. That's not great, but it's not criminal yet." He handed Reed a business card. "If you want to keep your badges, you're going to tell us everything. Every bribe taken. Every time Hayes looked the other way. You talk, you walk, you stay silent, you go down with them." Reed took the card. Her hands were shaking. "I'll talk. I'll tell you everything." "Good choice," Kendrick said. He turned to the door. "Come on, Nia. Let's go get our car back. I think Officer Harlan left it unlocked." As they walked out of the station into the humid Alabama afternoon, the cameras flashed. Kendrick didn't smile. This wasn't a victory lap. It was just the beginning of the cleanup. But for Vance Harlan, watching through the tinted window of the federal transport, his life as he knew it was effectively over. He just didn't know how bad it was going to get. The federal courthouse in Birmingham was a stark contrast to the humid, dusty streets of Pine Creek. It was a fortress of marble and glass, air-conditioned to a crisp coolness. But for Vance Harlan, sitting at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit that was 2 sizes too tight, it felt like an oven. Months had passed since the arrest, months of sitting in a federal detention center, denied bail because he was deemed a flight risk and a danger to the community. The irony wasn't lost on anyone except perhaps Vance, who still wallowed in a deep pit of victimhood. The courtroom was packed. Every seat in the gallery was taken. In the front row sat Kendrick and Naya Whitaker, looking impeccable in tailored suits. They weren't just witnesses. They were the architects of Vance's downfall. Behind them sat the national press. The story had gone nuclear. The dash cam footage, the very footage Vance had hoped to use to frame them, had been leaked. YouTube had it. Twitter had it. Millions of people had watched Vance Harlan sneer, "Don't get smart with me, boy," to a decorated federal agent. The comment section was a graveyard of Vance's reputation. He was the most hated man in America. "All rise," the bailiff intoned. The Honorable Judge Evelyn Vance swept in. She was known as the Scalpel for her ability to cut through legal nonsense. She didn't tolerate theatrics. Vance's lawyer was a court-appointed public defender named Mr. Finch. Vance had tried to hire Langston, the personal injury lawyer he had protected for years, but Langston wasn't answering calls. "Mr. Finch," Judge Vance said, adjusting her glasses, "we are here for the suppression hearing. You are arguing that the dash cam footage should be inadmissible." "Yes, Your Honor," Finch said, sweating. "My client argues that the audio was altered, that he never used racial slurs, that Agent Whitaker provoked the confrontation to entrap a local officer." Judge Vance looked over her glasses at the prosecution table. Naya Whitaker stood up. She wasn't prosecuting this specific case. That would be a conflict of interest, but she was assisting the U.S. Attorney, David Ross. "Your Honor," Ross said, standing, "we have the metadata from the SD card. We have the independent verification from the FBI's Digital Forensics Lab. And we have a surprise witness who can speak to the authenticity of Mr. Harlan's behavior." Vance frowned. "Witness who?" "Call Arthur Langston to the stand," Ross said. Vance's heart stopped. Langston. The back doors opened and Arthur Langston walked in. He didn't look like the confident billboard lawyer anymore. He looked shrunken. He was wearing a wiretap device that had been removed, but he was clearly cooperating. He avoided looking at Vance entirely. Langston took the stand. He was sworn in. "Mr. Langston," Ross began, "do you know the defendant?" "Yes," Langston said quietly. "That's Vance Harlan. He was on my payroll for 7 years. A gasp rippled through the gallery. Vance gripped the table. "You rat! You dirty rat! And what did you pay Mr. Harlan to do?" Ross asked. "To target out-of-towners, Langston admitted, his voice trembling. Specifically people driving expensive cars who looked like they might have insurance. He would pull them over, harass them, maybe rough them up. Then I'd send a runner to the jail to offer them my legal services to sue the city. We'd settle out of court, and Vance and I would split the settlement money. It was a churn and burn scam. And did Mr. Harlan have a preference for who he targeted? Ross asked. Langston hesitated. Then he looked at Kendrick Whitaker in the front row. He targeted black drivers, Langston whispered. He said they were easier to scare. He said the juries in Pine Creek wouldn't believe them over a white cop. The courtroom erupted. Judge Vance banged her gavel, her face a mask of fury. Order! Order in this court! Vance felt the blood drain from his face. It wasn't just a bad stop anymore. It was a conspiracy. It was a hate crime. It was systematic corruption. Mr. Finch, Vance's lawyer, looked at Vance with disgust. He didn't even bother to cross-examine Langston. He knew the ship had sunk. Then came the coup de grace. Ross queued up the video again on the giant monitors. We would like to play the moment of the arrest one more time, specifically focusing on the defendant's reaction to the badges. The video played. The sound of Vance screaming, "Gun!" filled the room. Then the silence. Then Kendrick's voice, calm and commanding. And finally Vance's face, zoomed in and enhanced when he saw the FBI credentials. The fear in his eyes wasn't the fear of a man in danger. It was the fear of a bully who had picked a fight with a lion. "Mr. Harlan," Judge Vance said, looking directly at Vance, "I have seen enough. The motion to suppress is denied. The evidence stands, and frankly, if I were you, I would start praying for a plea deal because a jury is going to bury you." Vance looked at Kendrick. Kendrick offered a small, polite nod. It was the ultimate power move. He wasn't angry anymore. He was just efficient. The sentencing hearing weeks later was a formality. The jury had deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts: deprivation of rights under color of law, conspiracy to commit extortion, filing false police reports, assault on a federal officer. Judge Vance didn't hold back. "Vance Harlan, you have disgraced the uniform you wore. You used the power of the state as a weapon of terror against innocent citizens. You didn't just break the law, you broke the public trust. I sentence you to 25 years in a federal correctional institution without the possibility of parole. 25 years. Vance would be 70 when he got out, if he got out. He was processed out of the county jail and put on a bus, the Con Air transport. He was shackled hand and foot, chained to the seat. The other prisoners on the bus eyed him. They saw the soft hands, the terrified eyes. They smelled the cop on him. Fresh meat. A tattooed man 2 rows back whispered. They arrived at FCI Talladega, a medium-security federal prison. It wasn't the club-fed, white-collar camp Vance had fantasized about. Because of the violence charges and the use of a weapon, he was placed in general population. The intake process was a nightmare. He was stripped naked, ironically, the very thing he had tried to do to Naya. He was sprayed for lice. He was given a uniform that smelled like industrial detergent and old sweat. "Name?" the guard barked. He was a young black man, no older than Deputy Sanders back in Pine Creek. "Vance Harlan," Vance mumbled. "I was a cop. I need protective custody." "You can't put me in Gen Pop." The guard looked up. He recognized the name. Everyone did. "Protective custody is full," the guard said, his face impassive. "Besides, PC is for people in danger. You're a tough guy, right? The hammer." Vance flinched. "Please, they'll kill me." "Keep your head down and your mouth shut," the guard said, handing him a thin mattress roll. "Cell block D, move." Cell block D was a cacophony of noise, shouting, metal clanging on metal, the blare of televisions. As Vance walked the tier, the noise died down. Heads turned, eyes locked onto him. News travels fast in prison. They knew who he was. They knew what he had done. He reached his cell. It was a 6x8 concrete box. His cellmate was already there, doing push-ups on the floor. He was a massive man with a shaved head and Aryan Brotherhood tattoos covering his arms. Vance hesitated at the door. Maybe this is okay, he thought. Maybe the white gangs will protect me. The cellmate stopped doing push-ups. He stood up, wiping sweat from his forehead. He looked Vance up and down. "You the cop?" the cellmate asked. "Ex-cop," Vance corrected quickly. "I was framed just like you guys." The cellmate laughed. It wasn't a friendly laugh. "We don't like cops in here," the man said. "But we really don't like cops who make the news. You bring heat. You bring lockdowns." "I can pay," Vance said, desperate. "I have money stashed outside." "Your money is gone, Harlan." A voice came from the walkway. Vance turned. Standing at the bars of his cell was a group of 3 inmates. One of them was Latino, small but with eyes like a shark. "We saw the news," the Latino inmate said. "The feds seized everything. Your house, your truck, your pension. You got nothing." Vance sank onto his bunk. It was true. The civil asset forfeiture laws, the very laws he used to steal cash from drug dealers, had been used against him. Kendrick and Naya had filed a civil suit alongside the criminal case. They had stripped him bare. "So," his cellmate said, cracking his knuckles, "you're broke, you're a cop, and you're famous. That's a bad combination, Harlan." That first night, the lights went out. The darkness was total. Vance lay on his bunk, staring at the concrete ceiling. He could hear the breathing of the man below him. He could hear the shouts from down the hall. "Hey, Officer Harlan, pull me over now!" Someone screamed in the dark. Laughter echoed through the block. Vance closed his eyes and saw the Range Rover. He saw the sunlight glinting off the black paint. He saw Kendrick's calm face. "Why didn't I just let them go?" he thought. "Why did I have to be the big man? Regret is a bitter pill, but in prison, it's the only medicine you get." The next morning, Vance went to the cafeteria for breakfast. He tried to sit alone. He put his tray down, watery oatmeal and a hard biscuit. He felt a shadow fall over him. He looked up. It wasn't an inmate. It was the warden. Warden Miller, no relation to the officer, stood there with a clipboard. "Harlan," the warden said. "Yes, sir." Vance stood up, habit kicking in. "You have a visitor." Visitor. Vance's heart leaped. Maybe it's a lawyer, maybe an appeal. "Legal visit," the warden said. "Follow me." Vance was led to a private room. He walked in expecting to see Mr. Finch. Instead, sitting at the metal table looking relaxed and healthy, was Kendrick Whitaker. Vance stopped. The guard closed the door behind him. "What are you doing here?" Vance asked, his voice shaking. "I promised you I'd see it through," Kendrick said. He didn't look angry. He looked at Vance like one might look at a specimen in a jar. "I wanted to see if the system worked." "You ruined my life," Vance whispered. "No, Vance," Kendrick said firmly. "You ruined your life. I just turned on the lights. You were the one standing in the dark doing dirty things." Kendrick slid a piece of paper across the table. "What's this?" Vance asked. "It's a letter," Kendrick said. "From the Department of Justice. We're offering you a deal, a reduction in sentence." Vance's eyes widened. "What?" "Because Langston was just the middleman," Kendrick said, leaning forward. "We want the judge. We want the mayor. We want the whole network in Pine Creek. You know where the bodies are buried, Vance? You were the bag man." Vance looked at the paper. If he talked, he could knock years off. He could get moved to a safer prison. But if he talked, he was a snitch. And snitches in prison. "If I talk," Vance said, sweat breaking out on his lip, "they'll kill me in here." "If you don't talk," Kendrick said, standing up and buttoning his suit jacket, "you'll rot in here for 25 years. And based on what I saw in the cafeteria, I don't think you'll last 25 months. Kendrick knocked on the door for the guard. "Think about it, Vance. You have 24 hours. The offer expires when I get back to Atlanta." Kendrick walked out. Vance was left alone in the room with the paper. The choice was his. Be a rat and live in fear, or be a convict and die in here. He looked at the signature line on the document, United States of America versus Vance Harlan. He picked up the pen. The pen felt heavy in Vance Harlan's hand, heavier than his service weapon ever had. He stared at the plea agreement lying on the metal table of the prison visitation room. The hum of the fluorescent lights overhead was the only sound, a maddening buzz that seemed to drill into his skull. Snitch. The word echoed in his mind. In the culture of the Pine Creek Police Department, being a rat was worse than being a criminal. But as Vance sat there shivering in his ill-fitting prison jumpsuit, a bitter realization finally washed over him. Where was Chief Hayes, retired with a full pension before the indictments hit? Or so he hoped. Where was Mayor Granger, probably golfing at the country club, claiming ignorance? Where was Langston, singing like a bird to save his own skin? Loyalty was a lie. It was a currency the rich used to buy silence from the poor. Vance had been the loyal soldier his whole life, the hammer who crushed anyone who threatened the status quo. And what did he have to show for it? A 6x8 cell and a terrifying Aryan Brotherhood cellmate who wanted him dead. Vance uncapped the pen. "Screw him," he whispered to the empty room. "If I'm going down, I'm taking the whole damn town with me." He signed his name, Vance A. Harlan. The ink wasn't even dry when he knocked on the door. "Guard, I'm done. Get Agent Whitaker back here." Days later, the storm that Kendrick Whitaker had promised finally made landfall in Pine Creek. But this wasn't just rain. It was a hurricane of federal indictments. It started early one morning. The town was waking up, coffee brewing in the diner, school buses idling. A convoy of black SUVs, unmarked vans, and armored trucks rolled down Main Street. This time, they didn't stop at the police station. They went straight to the top. Target 1, the courthouse. FBI agents breached the chambers of Judge Roy Abernathy. Abernathy, a man who had sat on the bench for decades, signing blank warrants for Vance Harlan to fill in later, was dragged out in his pajamas. He was found shredding documents in his home office. The image of the distinguished judge in a silk robe being handcuffed on his front lawn was broadcast live by the news choppers. Target 2, City Hall. Mayor Philip Granger was in the middle of a televised press conference denying any knowledge of the corruption when Kendrick Whitaker walked onto the stage. "Mayor Granger," Kendrick said, his voice booming without a microphone, "federal warrant." Granger froze. "You can't do this here. I am the mayor." "You're a racketeer," Kendrick corrected him. "We have the ledger, Philip. Vance gave us the ledger. The kickbacks from the construction contracts, the payoffs from the impound lot, the cut you took from every settlement Langston made. It's over." Nia Whitaker stepped up and slapped the cuffs on the mayor. The press cameras flashed like lightning. It was the perfect visual, the corrupt establishment falling to the very justice they had tried to pervert. Target 3, the remnants across town. The dominoes fell. The towing company owner, who charged exorbitant fees and split them with the police, arrested. The doctor who falsified sobriety tests, arrested. Officer Bryce Caldwell, who had just stood by and watched, he surrendered voluntarily, tears streaming down his face, hoping for leniency. By noon, the power structure of Pine Creek had been decapitated. The Good Old Boys network wasn't just broken, it was pulverized. Months later, Vance Harlan sat in a sterile recreation room in a federal correctional institution in West Virginia. He had been moved. Witness protection for prisoners was a lonely existence. He was in a unit with other snitches, mobsters who turned state's evidence, gang leaders who sold out their lieutenants. There was no status here, no hammer. He was just inmate number whatever. He was sweeping the floor, a job that paid pennies an hour. On the wall, a television was playing the news. Vance stopped sweeping. On the screen was a ceremony in Washington, D.C. The Attorney General was standing at a podium. Behind him stood Kendrick and Nia Whitaker. "For their extraordinary courage and dedication to the rule of law," the Attorney General said, "Special Agent Kendrick Whitaker and Senior Prosecutor Nia Whitaker are awarded the Attorney General's Award for Distinguished Service. Their work in dismantling the systemic corruption in Alabama has become a model for civil rights enforcement nationwide." The camera zoomed in on Kendrick. He looked strong, stoic. He didn't look like a victim. He looked like a victor. Vance leaned on his broom handle. He felt a strange emotion. It wasn't anger anymore. It wasn't even jealousy. It was resignation. He remembered the moment on the side of the road. The heat, the arrogance, the feeling that he was a god in his own little kingdom. "I picked the wrong fight," Vance thought. "I saw a black man in a nice car, and I saw a criminal. I should have seen a king." "Hey, Harlan, move it," a guard shouted. "Floor ain't gonna sweep itself." "Yes, boss," Vance muttered. He looked down at the linoleum and kept sweeping. The dust piles moved back and forth, going nowhere, just like him. Meanwhile, in Atlanta, Kendrick and Nia walked out of the Department of Justice building. The ceremony was over. They had the medals in velvet boxes, but they weren't wearing them. They walked to the parking garage. Their car was waiting. A new one, a dark blue SUV, government-issue bulletproof glass. "You think he's watching?" Nia asked, tossing her bag into the back seat. "Vance?" Kendrick paused, hand on the door handle. "Yeah, I think he is. He has plenty of time to watch TV where he is." "Do you feel bad for him?" Nia asked. Kendrick looked at her. He thought about the years of terror Vance had inflicted on people who didn't have a badge to protect them. He thought about the fathers taken from their children, the careers ruined by false charges, the fear in the eyes of the community. "No," Kendrick said simply. "He got exactly what he ordered. We just delivered it." He got into the car. The engine purred to life. "Where to next?" Nia asked, buckling up. "I heard there's a sheriff in Mississippi who thinks he can seize voting machines." Kendrick smiled. He put the car in gear. "Let's go say hello," he said. The SUV rolled out of the dark garage and into the bright, blinding light of the afternoon sun. They were hunters now, but they weren't hunting for sport. They were hunting for justice, and business was good. And that is the story of how Officer Vance Harlan learned the hardest lesson of his life. He thought his badge made him untouchable. He thought his prejudice was patriotism. But he forgot that in the United States of America, nobody is above the law, especially not the people sworn to enforce it. Vance is currently serving his sentence. He lost his pension, his family, and his freedom. Kendrick and Nia Whitaker continue to serve at the highest levels of the federal government, reminding corrupt officials everywhere that you never know who is behind the tinted windows of the car you just pulled over. Karma isn't just a concept. Sometimes it's a federal agent with a warrant. If you enjoyed this story of instant karma and justice served, please smash that like button. Do it for Kendrick and Nia. What would you do if you were in Kendrick's shoes? Would you have stayed that calm, or would you have snapped? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you want more stories like this where the bad guys get exactly what they deserve, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell notification so you never miss a video. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and remember, check your bias before it checks you. See you in the next one.